Hey, how you guys doing? It's producer from Brothers Comics. Welcome to, I guess, the Marvel Hacks. Uh, this is our X-Men 97 recap. It premiered on Wednesday. We're just catching up to get a chance to record our recap here. Online is Brother Beavis. Say what's happening, man.
Hey, what's up, my
So,
mutants?
yeah, so I kind of wanted to go over this because this was something that I was thinking before we get into it, and we'll talk about the episode and all of its highlights or whatever. I kind of wanted to talk about this. Um, Would you say in the 7+ years we've been doing this, we're fair, right? Wouldn't you say we're nerds and we pick at shit, but we're fair.
Well, I would agree with that. There is certainly stuff we have where our bias either creeps in or creeps out, to a varying degree. But in general, I think we don't hate things because of some outside reason, but
Right.
we do tend to look for the things that we hate. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And then we're not people that get on here and it's like, well, back in our day, this was so much better and this is so much better. And in fact, I would say we have gone out of our way to uncover stuff that we thought was cool when we were young
hmm
and poked sticks at it to be like, yeah, you know what, this was probably okay at the time, but and with 2024 eyes or whatever, it's not cool. Would that be fair?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
Or
so
or we've actively avoided revisiting those things because we know it's going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
bad.
exactly. Okay, so
Thundercats, I'm looking at you.
yes, so with all of that being said, um, X-Men 97, 2 episodes in, this is a fantastic cartoon. We talk
Yeah.
a lot about fan service, good and bad. We talk a lot about remaking things that didn't need to be remade. Before we get into the specifics, as a general whole here, these 2 episodes were absolutely fantastic. And it was retro fanning done properly. Would that be fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I,
Absolutely.
I mean, there's, I mean, again, I guess in a top down looking thing, you could start to like pick at it and maybe find some stuff that you weren't okay with. But we had talked about before it premiered, it was like, well, who's the audience for this? Because this shit went off the air a long time ago. So people that grew up on it are full tax paying adults. So who is the show geared towards? Are you gearing towards this 35 and above crowd that would have grown up on the original? Or were you going to try to gear it down towards little kids to get, new viewers or whatever? And they definitely lean towards the older crowd. Would that be fair too?
I think so, but by the same token, if you compare this to the What If series, I mean, this is a much more entertaining show so far than What If. So,
Hmm.
like, I'm not sure. Like, I mean, because to me, What If was aimed at primarily the MCU slash comic book fan to see some of the crossover and some of the stuff that might have been teased or whatever, and some new
Hmm.
kind of edge stories of the main line. I mean, I think that was more like that was probably more targeted to people that were already looking for it.
Hmm.
Whereas I think you're right in that the primary audience is for the people who loved this as a show in the 90s, but I think it's been made to where it, I think it has much broader appeal if you watch it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I guess it does have a good jump on point, but I mean, you really need to have seen the original or at a minimum be familiar with it for it to make any freaking sense.
I mean, they
So,
certainly don't prop you up at all, but
no.
there there was never a lot of. I mean, even in the first movie, there was not a. There's never a lot of X-Men origin because it's just they were born this way. They're different. People hate them. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just such a concise mission statement or whatever. You can just kind of pick up from the jump.
Right.
So, and I think that holds here. Like obviously they're going to get into the backstory of individuals at some kind of pace, which is what they did in the first run.
Hmm.
But I don't know, you don't need a whole lot. Now, I don't I would it's hard for me to know what the general awareness of the X-Men is because it's been, I've been steeped in it for so long.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't, like nobody knew who the Avengers were, and everybody was willing to ride that train. So, like,
Yeah.
do people even know who the X-Men are?
Yeah, I mean, and this is a different conversation and a different podcast at some point in time about where they are comic book wise
Mm.
in 1997, which we've been recapping, and currently because it's really kind of all over the place. But I I wanted I think people need to understand that just slapping X-Men 97 on this, much like they tried to do X-Men Blue and Gold 5, 6 years ago in the comic books, like you could really have messed this up.
Hmm.
And it
That's a
feels like
good example, because X-Men Blue and Gold Modern was nothing like
no,
what we were ready for.
yeah. So they could have messed this up royally, and it seems like they took the pains to make sure that it was, is a dirty word sometimes, an homage,
Hmm.
but also, kind of not leaning so far into it that it's just like a recap of what we actually saw 20 plus years ago. So, all right, let's get into it. So, episode one is called "To Me, My X-Men." First off, what did you think of the new intro, which is really the old intro but
Right.
new?
Right. I mean, all signs had suggested they would go back to it, and it is remixed. And I'm assuming you're familiar with the lawsuit.
No
Yeah.
recap.
So I think it was a Hungarian cop show or something called Linda. I
Mm,
may have the country of origin name, but they ripped some. It was either unintentional or intentional. The intro music existed before the
no.
X-Men, and there was a lawsuit, and the guy, I guess, who composed it for the cartoon was ultimately written out of it,
Hmm.
but um, it's still I think Saban and Marvel at the time were still named in it, and there was a payoff.
Hmm.
So I think the general, like, I don't know if they felt now compelled to remix it some to avoid having to pay royalties, or
Hmm.
they just wanted to freshen it up or whatever. But it still has the same thing that we've had running in through our heads for like 30 years now. So
Right. Yeah. Two things. One, so this is Taylor's version. Uh,
that's
two,
I get that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it lives in my house. Two, um, the idea that they give you the option of skipping the intro is just hilarious.
We never
Who,
skip the intro.
who is skipping the X-Men intro? Like, I mean, it's just pointless, but it's very good. And then at the end of or on the intro of episode two, the like you get the Phoenix like kind of effect like there, and then I said that I texted that y'all yesterday, but I guess maybe I just missed it the first time. Like Morph's intro,
Mhm.
kind of ties right into Sinister.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, again, a nice throwback as well. So all right, so yeah, so
Yeah, and
we're
the
gonna get
people
into
that
your
were in
book.
the intro, the old intro, are still there. It's still largely the same. It looked like they touched it up some.
Yeah,
But then, the new ones are kind of seamless. The biggest thing I was wondering if they were going to change the lineup of the villains that square off at the end, because
yeah.
some of those cats never even made it to the show, to my
Well, they and what's her name is in
Death,
there now.
Deathstrike
Yeah,
and White
Deathstrike.
and Emma Frost. I don't know if she was in there before, but they had
Okay.
like somebody that looked like Brainchild or somebody who
Hmm.
was in the show, but kind of, yeah, like, yeah, that was what I was wondering.
And
And then the role of Magneto becomes really ambiguous. Spoiler
yeah, and
alert.
then they do, and Xavier still gets a shout out too in
Yeah,
the intro, which was like, oh, okay, but okay, I mean, again, we, well, I mean, if you watch the finale of the 90 whatever issue or the season 5 finale, series finale, I mean, he's not dead.
right.
They believe him to be dead, I guess, but he's not dead. He's with the Shi'ar, so there's no chance that he doesn't make a
Right.
comeback here. So, and it
Yeah, I mean
ties into the
that's
comics.
one of the many storylines that are lifted directly out of the books, and
Hmm.
one of the many times that we dispensed with Xavier for a while so that we could actually do something other than be Xavier's team. And the
Hmm.
team always grows when he's gone, because
Yeah.
he's just such a domineering presence when he's there.
Yep. So yeah, but yeah, right there with the intro. We'll do the little recap here for this. So Xavier is dead, air quotations, and the mutant hysteria hasn't gone away. The fuck out of here, or friends of humanity, depending on how you look at it. They're still on the rise. They got Sentinel tech now, and instead of rescuing Jubilee like they did in the pilot episode of Night of the Sentinels Part One, we get introduced to Robert Da Costa, Sunspot to everybody else, and you get this fight scene in the rescue of him in there, mostly leading off with I guess Bishop and Storm, and then finishing off with Cyclops going to work. So I mean, it's gonna come into it, and then the subplot is Jean is pregnant, and her and Scott are like kind of thinking about leaving the X-Men. Okay, so it's on the next slide. So just the highlights for season, the meaningful moments in episode one. You want to go off on your boy there, going off on that intro, Cyclops?
I
They
mean,
redeemed 30 years, no,
yeah,
20 years of bad Cyclops in about 30 seconds.
yeah, and there was like so much Cyclops and Jean. Like, this obviously the cartoon became the Wolverine show. Literally became the Wolverine cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
The movies became all about Wolverine and Storm, and this like puts the spotlight on Cyclops like there's never been before. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
The movie does where he like shoots the floor to spin around, whatever. That was a little video gamey for me,
Mm-hmm.
but like his power level, his innovation, like his fighting, like just the command, his attitude, it was great. This was for anyone like all the words I've all the times I've ever said the words like Cyclops is my favorite X-Men and I get that look. Like
Mm.
this is why Cyclops is my favorite
Yeah.
X-Men.
I mean, he can fight. His powers are like shooting himself across the floor, using and leaning more into what it's always been with his powers, more of a concussive blast
Hmm.
instead of a laser beam
Right.
strike. So in that sense, you're kind of going back to what it actually is. But like I understand,
The
and
other
I go ahead.
the other funny part, just from the very beginning, because we've had this prior conversation about how woke this show is. So I'm sitting here like, oh, so the white man is the villain, and the first people we get to see is Sunspot, Bishop, Storm.
Yeah.
All right, what show is this? Come
What
on.
show is
Yeah,
this? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Uh, yeah.
But fortunately, the white savior made it in just under the wire. Whoo,
Yeah,
shoo.
woo.
Saved
Yeah,
it for me.
but also throwback to that they're using the Friends of Humanity people
Yeah.
from the beginning of the show. I was like,
And,
oh wait, I know that dude.
and they did not get a character redesign. They're
No,
still
not at
wearing
all.
those 90s
Yeah,
jean jackets, the ripped off
yeah,
sleeves, and the mullets
yeah.
all around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like, wow, this is a pretty good introduction. So just to go through some of their, yeah, the FOH upgrades, not in character design, but they do have Sentinel Tech. Val Cooper
Hmm.
makes that introduction there. I don't remember her being in the original show, correct?
Um,
Or maybe in the X Force episode. Was she in that? Or not X Force, X Factor? I
yeah, I
don't.
think so. I would have to go back to the lab on that one.
Yeah,
Was she because that was not who the Mystique used like more of the Raven Darkholm character
yeah.
in like the first season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she had to be in it. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think the original voice actress for Jean Grey is doing Val Cooper now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, she's in there. There's a throwback in there, an Easter egg too. When she does meet with Scott after this whole thing, and she's walking on the treadmill.
Mm.
He's like, "When you done with your cardio or whatever." But that's like when they talk with the president too. When
Yeah,
Gyrich meets with the president,
yeah.
in the Night of Sentinels or whatever. So I thought that was kind of
But
weird.
this is yeah, so she would be taking over for Gyrich, who's in jail.
Yeah, without the bill. The lack of Wolverine. You mentioned it. I'm like, this is good. You don't need to make him the focus. He's going to be there. I'm sure he has a bunch of stories that you can and will tell over time, but the lack of him being there was probably the best thing that they could have done.
Absolutely, and a very similar, very similar reveal. He comes up and he pops up in the danger room in somebody
Mhm,
else's battle, much like
right.
the last time. His intro in the very first episode was still great, but
Yeah.
we've had more than our fill of Wolverine ever
Yeah.
since. So
Yes.
yeah.
More than enough. And so what happens is that Sunspot gets captured. They rescue him. They bring him back to the mansion. We get it seems like a new Beast voice. He's like he's doing a parody of essentially the dude that did Beast or whatever. It
It
seems
and
like it. It might be the
I
same dude.
I think it's the same guy, and
Okay.
if I have a criticism of this, I it feels like the voices, I don't care if they're different, but it seems like they haven't even locked in
Hmm.
to some of this 'cause,
Well, Rogues
or
is way over
yeah,
the top. Yeah.
or it's just I haven't like, I'm still listening for what it used to be, but
Hmm.
it's either me or them or some combination, but I'm not locked in on the voices yet. Like,
Yeah. And
if they weren't on screen and I heard them, in some cases, I wouldn't be sure who it was.
yeah, I went to MegaCon in February, and then they had the voice actors from the original show there: Storm, Jean Grey, OG Gambit, Jubilee, Beast. I might be forgetting, and Rogue. And they literally, obviously, couldn't talk about this, but now they can. You know, the Storm lady is the same lady that was there as well. And it didn't sound like Beast, but the Rogue lady, she did the voice there. She was the only one that actually did the voice, but it wasn't so over the top as in this episode. Like it's
Mm.
way over the top. But anyway, all right. So yeah, lack of Wolverine. So they rescue him. He winds up escaping out there, and then they have to go, you know, find him again. And it leads to this club scene or whatever. And Jubilee is not annoying in this,
Yeah,
which was shocking.
yeah. Yeah,
Like,
and she becomes the Storm Mammy character to like make peace with the new member, and a lot of parallels from when in the first season where they're up on the clock tower and she's explaining like, her experience coming to the school and what the school
mhm,
is, just like Storm did with Jubilee.
yeah, yeah. And then how did they get the Sentinel tech? So they have to go see Guy Rich. They wind up reading his mind, and they find out that there's hidden master modes by Trask somewhere else, and then it leads to this massive comic book fight where they wind up flying in the jet out there, and then they get attacked, and then it goes down to Cyclops' landing, bro. I was like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. And I'm like, before he utters the "to me, my X-Man," and he knows what he's doing. Like he gives a little smile and nod before he kind of heads down, kind of Captain America style,
Uh,
and uses his powers to brace for his landing. I mean, as a Cyclops person, you had to be hyped.
Oh yeah, I mean, because like he's like the first one out of the jet, right? And then you
Yeah,
could see him start to pair up, and you can't do if you're counting in your head, you're like, there's not enough people. And then I was just like, yeah, I know what's coming here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was great, and it was like a perfect spot for like the commercial. Like if it was gonna cut to a commercial and be like, hey, here's some Legos or Danimals, and then we'll be back in 90 seconds. What about Morph's transformations in
So
that
I was
scene?
when the first one was Archangel, and I was like, where'd he come from? Like they're going here already, and then I was
Yeah.
like, oh wait, I know what's happening.
Yeah, there's a blob one coming up
Yeah,
here when they get to that fight, which is their version of doing, kind of like a fastball special, I guess.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, so there's, it's an interesting way to get a lot of these cameos in and callbacks. But if I'm going to take it to the lab, like historically, the shape changer doesn't acquire the powers of the creature that he changes into,
yeah,
whereas he might have been able to do some rudimentary gliding as
yes,
Archangel.
yes,
He probably would have suffered severe abdominal damage as Blob, but yeah.
yeah.
So,
It
but
it looks
that's what
cool.
we're saying is that he can acquire people's powers. So,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
again,
and I guess he's the most powerful mutant. I guess they've only shown physical powers.
and then again, he's his powers. I mean, again, it's mimic, but we couldn't call him that. So his
Changeling.
power set is kind of like,
He's
yeah,
not
it's
mimic. He's the changeling.
changeling. Yeah, but his power set is a little nebulous,
Yeah.
to say the least, in the cartoon, because we really only got him for a couple of episodes.
But better this than just like all he could do was like do like infiltration gags and confuse people. So,
Right.
they found a more active way to work him into the action. So,
Hmm.
but this
Um.
scene in general, like, I mean, this is, whether it's the, like I brought it up earlier, the What If show is very much like this, but a lot of the modern comics, when there's a fight, it's just like, hitting hard isn't going to work.
Mhm.
We're just going to have to hit it harder.
Yeah.
And this was like, people actually finding interesting ways
Mm,
to use their abilities without like going early 80s and explaining every
right.
not Marvel 1960 explaining
Yes.
everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So like in particular Beast hot wiring a sentinel,
Hmm.
the power combos. It was a fight or an action sequence with meaningful action
Hmm.
where the characters came through also. It
Yeah.
was great.
And it's a time to throw in, the animation is obviously better because we're so many years more in terms of the future.
And
And
they have so much more money to spend on it
yes,
probably.
that, and but it's not like the static action that you got in the original series. So like it obviously it looks a lot better. Um, Omega Mutant Detective. That was a hype moment too.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that is something that the online discourse about Storm and her handling in really across a lot of media, particularly the movies. I think where everybody loves Halle Berry, the person, character, beauty, but she didn't really bring anything to that particular role. And then her powers in the movies were always lightning, a little bit of wind, but that's pretty much it. And then it got even worse in the second parts of those movies with what Alexandra's ship, and it just got bad. So to give her due in this moment, one, acknowledging that she's an Omega level mutant, and two, her intro to come in here and just freaking create a ice sandstorm or whatever and lift all those sentinels out. What was Cyclops' line? What's the forecast? I mean, and they give her the look at the feet entrance, even though you know who it is. I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, you've established that. And in light of what happens in episode 2, it tells you how much of a big deal it is to
Hmm.
have her not be powerful,
Right.
kind of moving forward.
Yeah, it was like the great part of it was like for all the Sentinel ass they kicked over the first series of that sequence, then to like take it up another level. Just and by the way, we also have Storm. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I thought that was a pretty amazing reintroduction. I we haven't talked about it or whatever, and I was hoping they explain like Bishop being added to the team, but not adding anything to the team. It's
he
just kind of weird. Hopefully they give him a little bit
Yeah.
more of a story here.
Yeah,
Um,
they make one like offhand reference to the tech, the little armband that kept him
yeah,
there. But yeah, he was definitely not the biggest part of this show yet.
no, not at all. But it's
But
it's fine.
the along the lines of Storm, like uh, throughout this, I was like, and maybe you'll get into this in the second one. But I was like, why is Jean Grey still talking? Like she had like more to do. Even counting the Phoenix Dark Phoenix friends, I think she had more to do in these two episodes than the
Right.
entire first series. But I think they also like captured the sister like relationship
Yes, the
between
sisterhood,
Jean and Storm
right, which
in
was
a way that
completely
was,
ignored.
yeah,
Yes.
they probably said, they would say you're my sister, something like
Hmm.
that in the first series, but like you didn't feel it.
Yeah.
And again, like those sorts of things make the second episode better.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought that part was great. And then they obviously defeat the Sentinels. They get back. Scott and Jean are about to announce that they are going to leave the team. After Sunspot gives us only a little bit of arm of his
Hmm.
show powers, before he takes off. And they did. That's Sunspot's a whole nother conversation too. Again, New Mutants suck, but he's probably has the best power set of anybody in there, maybe outside of Cannonball. And he's kind of been presented as kind of like Brazilian dickhead Johnny Storm. He's kind of rich, not kind of rich. He's rich. He's kind of a jerk, and that's fine. And I thought they captured that fairly well there. But they gave him the intro and then they let him go, hoping to return. But he goes off after speaking with Jubilee, and then a detection in Xavier's study. They all head out there, and then Magneto's back, and Charles left everything into him in his wheel, and to me my X-Men, as Magneto. I thought a fairly good cliffhanger ending. Then I did read somewhere online that these all end on cliffhangers, which I
Mm.
was like, you could be setting yourself up for, you got to keep topping yourself. And but I
There
thought they
was
did really
even
well
in
with
the
the
first
first.
series, well, I guess the earlier seasons, there was usually a tease of something, like
Yeah.
particularly season 2 where there was the meta arc.
Hmm.
Um, that ran through it. They were always teasing because they told the majority of the Savage Land story as like the bumpers for the
Mm,
regular story. Um, so,
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
whenever they like, remember they teased Juggernaut.
Mm,
They flew back from Genosha and Juggernaut
mm,
destroyed. So I don't think that's out of the ordinary.
okay. So yeah. So the reintroduction of Magneto, and then that's the end of episode one.
I thought they had already brokered that in the last episode of the previous series
The
that they,
series finale.
yeah, that he was
Yeah.
going to be with them or whatever, but
Mm.
they kind of made it more
Well,
dramatic.
but to be fair, who the hell watched that shit?
Nobody.
I don't think
I,
anybody really watched much X-Men after the Phoenix Saga. So
no, there's
yeah.
some like the season 4 stuff. They were doing stories that you might know, but they had to like mix up the characters,
Mm,
and it was always kind of weird. And then they would throw in some like made up stuff just for the background. It was always
yeah.
confusing. Season 5 was trash.
Yeah. I guess we didn't talk about Gambit's lack of whatever. A lot of the online discourse is about, he's woke and gay now because he wore
That's
a
right.
halter top.
Like, isn't
Uh,
that literal? Didn't he like wear that in X-Men like number one? Like,
yes,
yeah, I mean that's
yes. It makes no sense, And again, I it- something that we talked about with Disney Plus, at least in the MCU stuff, is about them sticking the landings on these things. Like, man, it was a pretty good show, but the ending kind of sucked or whatever. Now, this is an animation, it's a cartoon, and it has already a built-in fan base. But like I said at the beginning, they could have really messed this up.
oh yeah.
And there was the I guess showrunner of this thing. He gets shit canned 3 or 4 days before it premieres, and so you had to like, man, it crept into my head. I was like, man, that's not great. But whatever he did to get himself fired outside of this, allegedly they got 2 seasons in the can of him being the showrunner on it. So if this is any indication, well done, sir. No
Hmm.
matter, well, not no matter, but whatever you did to get fired, but well done. So, all right, let's get in episode 2. Our plot: Magneto is in charge. Okay. So I sent this to y'all yesterday. Okay, so if you've been rocking with us for a while, just go in the archives because we got all this covered for you for this podcast. Like, oh, Magneto's on trial. Word, yeah. Just go read Uncanny X-Men 200, or listen to our podcast where we recap Uncanny X-Men 200. Oh, Storm lost her powers. Oh, life, death. Word. Yeah, we got you covered on that too. Just go in the archives and look up Brother Comics, Life Death. We got that covered. Yeah, and what's going to happen in 201, unfortunately, which is probably going to happen on this show for Brother Beavis, we also have that recovered as well. So,
Did we
just
and we did it? Did we do Inferno? I can't remember.
oh yes, we did.
Okay, so
Yes,
that's
we
coming as
totally did
well.
that, as well as the Re-Inferno that came out maybe a year and a half ago. So yeah,
Mm.
we got it all covered. There's a whole bit I had to look for it about me and freaking oh god, what's her Goblin Queen
Madeline Pryor, Goblin
cosplay?
Queen.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, there's a whole bit. So anyway, all right, so Magneto is in charge. He gets, the UN pulls him because he's going to go on trial for all the things that he has done. And it culminates with this big battle at the UN, and we get a surprise appearance at the end. Um, what do you think of the reintroduction of Magneto, the character? The costume sucks. We ran it down on that same
yeah.
podcast, but it is comic book accurate, as people like to say. It is comic book accurate.
Yeah, I mean that's I can give it a pass in that regard because it was definitely a choice. But they've rendered it. His like face in his head is weird to me.
Yeah,
That's what's got me like I can't like look at his face, look
yeah.
at his
Well,
head. So
I noticed this during the show, and then when I was pulling the pictures, I was looking for this one specifically. Like, he has this little M in his hair.
it's
So instead of having the helmet on, it
like a
has this
tabby
little
cat.
yeah. So, but whatever. So him coming into the house obviously makes things complicated. Scott is bothered, as you would imagine that he would be, as one of the oldest X-Men there, or longest foe or whatever. Storm is a little bit more willing to give him a chance. I mean, it's just really kind of how it played out in the comic book as well. Um, Bishop, what's his line? He was like, a future where Magneto leading the X-Men? I didn't see that one. So yeah. But obviously the big subplot of that is Rogue is they tease the Savage Land romance between Magneto and Rogue.
Yeah. And I was trying to remember, and I think I've convinced myself they didn't do this, but they had an arc in the Savage Land where everyone was depowered. But at
Mm,
that point, I think it was just Rogue, like, she was powerless and Gambit was there for her. They didn't, I don't think she had any positive interaction with Magneto. So they're going completely off the screen to
yeah.
try and suggest that there's some past history here.
Yeah. And they do have a scene where they talk together where
Mm-hmm.
Gambit overhears and another
He's all
sub
in his
thing.
feels.
Yeah. Anyway, he drops the Queen of Hearts as well. That was the card that he dropped. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically our plot, that we're just trying to get to this trial at the UN.
Well,
And
let me
go
hold
ahead.
on a second. And the irony is the story kind of went in reverse. Like it was Gambit that had the dark past that
Hmm.
when it came out, she dumped him.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, eh,
I wonder if they're gonna they might go full WB on this and do like make up
no,
break up. You're the villain
sir,
this time, the entire 10 episodes.
sir, don't do that. Just don't. All right, let's look at some highlights here from episode 2. The Morlocks reappear. Please don't hurt.
Leech.
Yeah, please don't hurt Leech. So they appear. Magneto does the save from the back, and runs the Friends of Humanity again. Which I thought was pretty cool. The costume, the sister moment that we risked with Jean and Aurora. Again, something that is uh, not even touched on in the movies about how close they were,
Hmm.
and then only kind of sort of maybe, but yeah, in those early X-Men books they were very very close, and yeah, it just kind of got shortchanged. The Rogue and Magneto tease. Okay, so we'll come back to the insurrection. um did we do the Executioner books?
The
We did
Executioner
Executioner
song. Well, no,
song,
the
I think
Executioner song isn't about the
yeah,
Executioner
that's what I'm
though.
saying, but we did that, but we do books with the Executioner? I
I
don't think
don't.
so.
So his origin was in an annual,
Okay.
um, and I don't know. I think he had the. I think he crossed over into the Legacy Virus story, which the less said about that, the better. I
Mm,
don't think he was ever particularly prominent in
mm-hmm.
anything.
Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, he is our villain here. Then they're kind of mixing things across here, where he's gonna actually have, you know, Forge's essential weapon that just,
Hmm.
mistakenly took Storm's powers. But we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so we talked about this, and again, okay, so for the people that YouTube this stuff instead of listening to it on a pod, so the last thing that we did about the X-Men, about the preview for this, we had talked about the X-Men being, it's woke because people were so upset about Morph being non-binary, and exceeding numbers of listens that we normally get. Um, and like a bunch of comments too about people commenting about this. Okay, couple of things. The comic books have always been woke. Two, if you're siding with the Executioner in this, you are the bad guy. I hope you understand that. He gave a speech when he's fighting Cyclops that every marginalized minority person has ever heard. It's like, one of the reasons I hate y'all is because y'all be whining so much. We get hated too. We just don't whine about it. We got the sense to not whine about it.
Hmm.
Mm. So, yeah. So the trial of Magneto culminates with him having a trial, with people protesting the fact that he's actually getting a trial. And lo and behold, they're going to come after the judges that are giving him the trial too, and the UN, because they're being fair to him. And it leads to a whole insurrection, which they name drop. at the near the end of the episode. And it was January 6th, literally, without superpowers.
Yeah.
And leaning into that has created another online discourse. It's like, well, y'all shouldn't be putting like modern politics in this. Like, um, hello, this is literally the story that is currently playing out right now, or
Yeah.
did. And it's the same thing. It's like, hey, a group of people we feel don't deserve anything is it's not even equality. Y'all want no equity? Like, it's none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
we
can
need to
talk
put a
about
spotlight.
racism because we fixed that in the 60s.
Yes,
But
yeah,
you got to
yeah,
wait 60 years before you can talk about the
yes. Oh,
insurrection.
yeah, okay. Okay. Racism, man, and when Obama was elected. Mm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Boy, yeah. So, again, keeping it in the comic book realm, it was a very good, kind of scene. It's kind of little another throwback to it's more of episode one or two, I can't remember episode one or two where Beast winds up getting captured in the original
Hmm.
series. Where they storm the courtroom during his trial. Um, so it
Yeah,
was like,
and
oh, okay,
that's a protest, and the police deal with that shit like that. There's
yes,
no that was
yeah,
not there wasn't an that
yeah.
insurrection was put down.
Yeah, you have to wonder about what's on the cutting room floor with the animation. Like, there's somebody wheel out a gallows to like try to hang them and shit. Like, oh, this is a Disney Plus, sir. We can't show that on here. So yeah, it's a whole insurrection. Magneto is in the process of squashing it. I did not like the idea fully. There's like there's this whole fight going on for the soul of whatever. Like, oh yeah, Jean's pregnant and having a baby. Get fly Cyclops out of here. Wait, what?
Eh,
I mean, I
yeah.
understand the plot point. Like, I get that part, but it was just kind of weird. And
Yeah,
Wolverine,
I mean,
go
they're
ahead.
trying to they seem to be trying to fit a lot in here. I mean,
Yeah,
they have there's a solid like 10 or 12 storylines they're laying the
yeah,
foundation for. So they're like,
yeah. It's
I know you had a fight scheduled and all, but we kind of got to
oops.
get this baby thing going.
Yeah, we gotta get to that part. So Rogue flies him out, and Wolverine is essentially great, like in this, because he has no line except oh, it's coming. Who? Apocalypse? Oh, I about died. Oh, it was like, she's like the baby. So yeah, he takes her off. The doctor's like, I'm not, giving, they won't birth a mutant baby or
That
whatever.
was a little like I feel like had they not done a walkthrough at this point, they didn't have the hospital
Yeah,
and tell me there's not a Shi'ar birthing machine in the mansion
yeah, somewhere
already
in
that
there.
just
Yeah,
or Beast
that
couldn't do
understood.
it. Like,
Beef,
come on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was weird. So yeah, so Cyclops goes back there while that's going on. So it leaves Magneto and Storm to fight off the horde essentially. And the executioner comes in after he dispatches of Cyclops in their fight. He has his weapon. He's supposed to be shooting at Magneto. Storm jumps in the front, and he loses her powers. There's a scene later on where Beast tells her it appears to be permanent. We need some more tests, but yeah, it appears to be permanent, and that was a moment where she loses her powers. And again, tagged on to the end of the first episode, where you saw how powerful she was, it made
Hmm.
it a moment.
Yeah,
I would,
inconsistent with the comic, like she jumped in front of Rogue, who was
mm,
being targeted for having just been one of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, having
right,
depowered Miss Marvel. Um, and she took that shot too that was never intended for her, and
right,
so
yeah. I mean, again, comic accurate. I kind of wonder why, because when she loses her powers, she had already done Punk Rock Storm,
mhm.
so she has Punk Rock Storm haircut here already, but one of the things that after she, loses her power and she becomes so, more focused on, hand to hand combat and all those types of things and her knife play and all of that, which I'm sure we won't see in this. But like, it was just kind of like, oh, we could have had the transformation where she goes cut the hair and goes that route, but that's fine. Um, yeah, so she loses her power. We get baby Nathan being born, which was, oh, okay. And again, playing off the old series, we already know that Cable
Mm-hmm.
makes his way back into this thing. He was in the earlier series or whatever, and although it's not really acknowledged here, but there's that. And then we have the reveal at the end. There's a knock on the door or whatever, and it's like, hey, I need the X-Men, and it's Jean. So now we know that one of them is Madeline Pryor. One of them is the clone. I'm assuming the one that's in the house that had the baby is the clone.
Yeah, I
But now
mean,
we don't know how Jean. I'm a. Well, again, that's what I was saying. So in the intro of episode 2, when they get to the fight things, there's a Dark Phoenix reveal in the intro. Like if you go back and watch it, there's a Dark Phoenix, like tag in there, and it's like, oh, so do they play off the story from the comic book, where you know took the Phoenix effect or did something to that effect, and I mean,
I would think
she's
it's more likely they go the sinister route, and because he was trying to get that genetic material, son, for most
mm,
of the first series. I would
yeah,
assume that somewhere along the way he created the clone and
mm.
replaced Jean, but who knows?
But
But
where's
you would,
Jean been all that time? Yeah,
yeah,
if she's been with the Fantastic Four, I'll pop.
eh,
Uh,
yeah.
it's an easy way to introduce them, and at this point, like if she had showed up with Reed, I would have popped.
But if I
And
recall, isn't that kind of how Madeline shows up at the mansion? Is that not? No, she's yeah, she
they
is
meet
right.
Madeline at Wolverine's aborted wedding.
Oh,
Like that's the first time they ever meet Madeline.
okay.
Like 170 whatever, because the whole fake Phoenix thing is like 175.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and that's how it is. Episode 2. What was you thinking on episode 2?
You know, it became I kind of watched them back to back, so it
Mm-hmm.
became just like one giant show.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there was just they packed so much into it. I thought, it's the characters, the having the show based on the characterization, the relationships, and the deep storytelling, the Claremont-esque reveals of just the tip of the iceberg of a story that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything you would want and expect from an X-Men show.
Yeah.
And why the X-Men are, I think, the premier Marvel property.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. And again, we've talked about it. Nobody cared about the Avengers until the MCU got it. People really cared about the X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
and you gotta hope that they take that same kind of care what they did with the Avengers with the X-Men moving forward. It's been time. They've had the Fox properties for whatever else. It's been time that they should have done something besides this with it, but also it's okay. I think there was a time that needed to be in between to let the stink die from those Fox movies, because there's a stink. And I think, allowing, this to breathe and using this as your introduction into that, uh, well done.
Yeah.
Well done. I saw something this morning. It was like, oh, somebody was like, oh, yeah, X-Men 97, already a top 5 animated show of all time. I'm like, could we not do that, though? Could we not? It's 2 episodes.
Yeah.
The top 5 animated thing, that's a debate or whatever. But could we not do that? Like, don't do that. How about this? It's better than season 5 of the original series. We can say that at this point. But beyond that, come on, son. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll be
Well,
excited
so
moving forward.
then let's do a direct comparison then. Night of the Sentinels versus these two.
Because of the extended animation that's so much better, I would lean in that direction. But I would also say you get points for originality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you were the first ones to do it. It's kind of like the Star Wars versus
Mm-hmm.
the reboot that was essentially just Star Wars. It's like, yeah, that movie looks better, feels better, it's acted better. Like all of that is good, but you got to go. The original was something, and you get the points for it. So I would probably lean in the old direction, but only out of because they should get some points for being the first ones to do it. What
Yeah,
do you think?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think the other main difference is, they teased some things in Night of the Sentinels, but it was largely a two-part story. The introduction of Jubilee and the Sentinels and a lot of the groundwork,
Mm,
the character by character reveal. I think that, it was probably a lot harder to land Night of the Sentinels, cold without, with just Pride of the X-Men before
yeah,
that, right?
right.
Versus,
It,
so I think also like this show owes a lot to that as well and can do more because of it. So
yeah,
yeah, but I mean, I remember how hyped I was for that Night of the Sentinels and then waiting for the second part to come out.
yeah,
Um, I can't wait till Wednesday,
yeah,
at this point. So we can set aside the quality of the series relative to other series, but in terms of the intro, like I cannot wait to watch
yeah,
more of this.
yeah. I don't think you could have done better. Like honestly, you hit every nostalgia point. You hit the comic book part. You put the fan service part. Like I mean, you hit every single bit. The opposite side of that would be if you continue to try to do that to not make this series its own and you're
Hmm.
really just repeating beats. Like that's where it could get a little bit goofy.
Hmm.
But more than that or over that, I think if kind of you laid the groundwork based on that and then you go with these stories moving forward. And again, Inferno is a difficult spot. Are you really going to put Madeline Pryor in that fit
Mm,
on Disney Plus? I mean, within reason, obviously, they're not going to go the whole route there. But are we going to be doing demons and devils and all of that stuff and sorcery on Disney Plus? Again, who's the show for?
yeah,
30 somethings or 12-year-olds?
yeah,
And you
yeah,
have to, how do you walk that line and tell that particular story without watering it down too much? But it would seem that they're trying to lean into it, and so I'm willing to give them, a little bit of a pass on that if they try to water it down some. But you can't go too far with it. But uh,
yeah.
I,
We'll find out a lot next week.
yes, again, I think again, like I said at the beginning when we started this, I think we're fair. Like I really do. Like I said, we do crap on some things probably excessively at some points, but when things are good and they're legitimately good, even if we didn't want it, expect it, or anything like that, we give it its props. This gets all the props.
Yeah,
It
go back
gets
to
it.
that Infinity War recap.
Yes, exactly,
See some
exactly.
marks.
Yes, yes. We were wrong. Yes, this is going to be a 1 hour circle jerk of Infinity War. So yeah, that's all I'm saying. All right, y'all. So we'll
Well,
be
the
back.
other thing too is
Uh,
like, so obviously they can't make a movie. They can't fit in a movie at this point, and I don't even know if it's on the docket. And they've canceled stuff and stretched out the schedule for good
yeah,
reason. So if this runs for the 3 years, does that get us back into 2 or 3 years? Does that get us back into the conversation of is there a movie? And then
hmm
what is the relationship between this cartoon and that movie?
right.
And on the one hand, this is a great way to transition into that. On the other hand, like we said before this aired, like they're getting down to the bottom of barrel of stories they can pull out.
Right.
So have they already done every X-Men thing you ever could do, short of like getting into some of the modern stuff, which
Mm.
is hit or
Hit or
miss and
miss.
not necessarily aligned with these characters or the
Right.
characterization of these characters. But what does that look like in a few years? Presuming we get to, well, they've showed them now as the teaser. So
hmm
we're going to get a live action X-Men movie again. So what is the relationship between this show and that?
Right. Well, a different version of that same conversation. So when the X Men movies come out, a lot of people's primary basis was the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the characterization in the movies were based on the cartoon too. Of the people that wound up in there. Scott, Little Milk Toast, Jean, whatever, Storm. Hey, sorry, cat trying to eat somebody's cereal. So, Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think like that was like, well, let's kind of stick it in this and let people kind of go from there, to kind of do that. And I think with this show, maybe you don't want to do that. Or as you've always said, just let this exist in its own universe,
Hmm.
and you can tell stories out of it. Like they're interconnected. This could be on Earth freaking 1820,
Hmm.
whereas the characters are on 616. You know what I mean? Like they can still exist in the same world, without getting too overly complicated, or they don't. Like this is a cartoon. We don't really talk about it other than it being a cartoon. Like nobody's referencing Earth's Mightiest Heroes, in the MCU cartoons, even though they kind of lifted stories from there too. So anyway, good stuff, y'all. Good stuff, Disney. Y'all really could have messed this up, and you didn't. There might be damn Disney about whatever game y'all was talking about the other day, but it ain't certainly about this show. So I'll be curious to what Hutch thinks when and if he ever sees it. Since he was kind of downgrading the original show there for a bit.
That's
Uh,
generous.
Yeah, I'm being kind. So I'm kind of curious as to how he will feel about this. I can't imagine that he would dislike it, but he's weird. So, but yeah,
He has a lot of he has much hate in his heart. So
yes, for Disney.
yeah,
Yeah. So, but we will be back. We will recap these as they come. This is how many episodes is this season?
10 is what I
10. Okay,
heard. Yeah,
so we got eight more to go. Mm,
we should have
yeah.
They have the episode titles out. We should have prepped that for this.
Oh, I mean, can you pull it? I mean, let's see
Let's see.
who can pull it first. Nooch.
Dutch rudder.
Yes, exactly. Oh, here we go. I think I got it. Season one, season two. No, wait. They always get. I don't know if you. Well, whatever. If you've been pulling these things and it keeps giving you stuff, X-Men the animated series from the original.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, they
every
said
time
the
I like
same thing.
put something in, and yeah, okay,
I
episode
thought like
list.
AI was supposed to make this shit work.
Yeah, no. All right, here we go. Episode list. To me, my X-Men, Mutant Liberation, Fire Made Flesh is episode 3.
All right, so that's
And
that's definitely Phoenixy.
yeah, 4, Life
Oh,
Death
and
Part
then
1
Motendo is Mojo. Ugh.
and Life
Yeah,
Death
so that's
Part 1.
Motendo is a Mojo story again.
Ugh, we could do
Remember it.
without
I
that.
don't know what that is.
Mm, yeah,
Other than
over Genosha.
it's the name is the X Men. Remember it. Whatever he
Remember
says.
it. Life Death
So they're
Part
splitting
2.
up Life Death,
Mm,
Bright Eyes,
Bright Eyes. Uh, okay.
and then the 3-part
Tolerance
finale.
is Extinction. 3 parts. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Again, if you've been rocking with us for a while, I will just post all of the links to all these comic books that we recap because we recap so many of these to talk about if you want a comic book background for what they are. And again, if you've never listened to us before, we 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 look back at the books reverently, but also take the piss out of them reverently. We look back and it's like, yeah, that was really cool. But if there's parts of it that weren't, we also say that. So again, we're fair. I will stand on that ground forever. Again, I know I've joked on here a lot about, hey, if y'all DC, you want to pay us off to tell us that all your shit is good, we will gladly take all the money and be like, you know what, Flash, greatest movie of all time. The only movie that's not as good as Flash is Black Adam. Like we will take all the money to talk and lie
Shazam
about.
2, way better than the
Yeah,
original.
yes, exactly. Electric Boogaloo Shazam, man, amazing. But I think we're fair in the sense that if you listen to us, we will not give you, we won't lie about like any of this stuff. Because if this had been bad, we would have run it to shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We would have ran it into the ground, and you would have heard us disappointed for 54 minutes and 25 seconds at this point. We would have, and I think if nothing else, that should probably be something that if you're people that listen to us or whatever, like I hope y'all understand that we're not gonna bullshit you. All
Even
right,
though we are the Marvel hacks.
we are the Marvel hacks. Yes. Well, but we expect more from them. That's basically how I see it. We expect you to do a little something something. So, all right, y'all. So we're gonna conclude this. We'll be back with a recap of that episode 3 at some point in time after it airs. And I don't know, man. Wednesdays you got AEW and X-Men. You gotta make a choice between them.
I think I've already made that choice.
Yeah. Speaking of things that suck. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So as the X-Men animated music plays us out on the not the Taylor version, the OG version. As it plays us out on the podcast side, I'm the producer. I'm signing off. Go ahead and sign off.
See you next time.
Peace, everybody.